Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. Trying to keep an even keel today because, nothing really happening today. Don't want to get too excited about things. It is, of course, Wednesday the 13th, which means terrible things are likely to happen because we're changing it from Friday the 13th. We're moving it up a couple of weeks, just like the Christmas decorations that have come out before Thanksgiving. We're going to make Wednesday the 13th the bad luck day. How about that? And abandon the old too late in the week Friday formulation of things. Daily Co's Radio is live now. Today, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, begs Adam Schiff, I am told, reliably by Bill in Portland, Maine, beg Adam Schiff with tears in my eyes, or as Trump likes to put it, tears running down his eyes, which is amazing. Sir, please, don't impeach the perfect president like a dog. He's better than Lincoln, many people are saying. Well, we'll see what happens. We're going to make very great progress, and we're making it right now. As a matter of fact, it's already been made. And we're murking and making great progress, just so you know that. By the way, great speech yesterday, fantastic exemplar of the Trump speech blueprint, speaking to the Economics Club of New York. I've never seen anything quite as daring as trying to, pull one over on jobs numbers in front of the Economic Club. This is just really amazing. I don't know if any of you caught that. I saw some great excerpts being circulated yesterday, including at some point in the speech, he claims that Ivanka herself, presumably through all of her fantastic, beautiful, very beautiful, effective programs, has created 14 million jobs in this country, which is a small, by some fraction, larger than the 6 million created by this administration, or credited to this administration, since the very beginning, since inauguration. So either that means that he has undone all of her progress such that there are only 6 million jobs left, or I'm not sure what, but bold move, I think, crediting your daughter with over 200% of the job creation that's actually happened in this country since the beginning of your administration. Plus, I did enjoy him resorting to his usual corrections routine of shouting out the wrong word off of the teleprompter and then simply correcting by saying, and adding the right word. It's really hilarious. I think the quote, here it is. To fuel our economic boom, we are bolding and boldly pursuing American energy independence. We're bolding it and italicizing and Italyizing. We're idolizing it. We're doing it in Italy. I'm not certain exactly what we're doing. But here he is squinting at the gigantic teleprompter that he uses, and still getting it wrong. So, all right. There was lots of great excerpts from that. What else do you want to talk about today? I mean, the president is facing impeachment hearings. Today's the start of the first public impeachment hearings. I guess have they already started? I don't know. I actually didn't bother to look at the timing of the news. It may or may not affect our availability for anybody, really. But for Joan McCarter in particular, Greg might just be glued to the television. I don't really know what's going on. We'll take it as it comes. Another big news story. I don't know how much time I'll spend on it, though I'm certain Greg will be rounding it up. Stephen Miller turns out to be kind of a Nazi, as it turns out. And so I guess apologies are due. They're probably not coming to Ilhan Omar, who pegged him as a white nationalist, to the chorus of gasping and pearl clutching provided by, I don't know exactly who was involved in it, but all of a sudden nobody could believe he was a white nationalist. She said it. So as it turns out, emails revealed by I don't know whom, but reported on by the Southern Poverty Law Center, as it turns out, in his private discussions with other white nationalists. Turns out that Stephen Miller is quite a white nationalist and reads all sorts of websites that he should have nothing to do with as a respectable human being, and passes them around and bases at least his attempts to implement American policy right out of the conspiracy-minded white supremacist websites wherever he can find them. And by the way, he also has an extremely poor sense of what will resonate as a scandal with people. There was at least one point in the conversation in which I had to laugh out loud that the theory by which he was constructing that there would be horrific outrage about the Democrats that he had caught in his trap was really something. All right, well, Greg is here. I know you've got a roundup to share with us. You may have heard at some point that the president is undergoing some sort of examination, and they might impeach the guy or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. They had Adam Schiff, who's a prosecutor, but I think it may be better served by having a proctologist. And we'll see what comes out.
Well, Trump is surely due for that examination and has probably been avoiding it. I have a feeling he may not have had that exam.
I know it's a big day.
Yes.
Because Brian Williams is anchoring MSNBC.
That's how you can tell.
That's how you can tell, because he's got a serious voice on. And, of course, I'm scratching my head about a proven fabulator, a fabulist, talking about
fabulator
Donald Trump's fabulous
yes.
stuff. But, hey, there it is. He got his job back, so he's there.
Fabulatronics.
The thing that strikes me, though, of course, and I've said this all last week, I'll say it again today, I think people are underestimating the impact of these hearings.
Okay, good.
Now, we have several groups of people, okay? We have the watchers who are going to see it. We have the not watchers because they've been told by Lindsey Graham not to watch.
Oh, all right. Well, sure.
We have the Fox watchers who are going to watch it but then get spin. Mm-hmm. We have confused people. We have some wonderful examples of that. Alex Wagner, for her show on Showtime The Circus, went to a Pennsylvania swing district and talked with Susan Wild, Representative Susan Wild, Democrats' constituency, at a town meeting, which was at a VFW hall, in a swingy, Pennsylvania kind of area.
Yeah.
And a lot of the older guys with the MAGA hats were complaining about how the impeachment is all a fraud and stuff like that. But that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was talking to some of the other folks after Susan Wild had done her presentation, carefully saying, here's what I think. This is why I did this. Impeachment is a process. We'll find out. A few of the voters there didn't want to hear about it. One vet stood up and started complaining about the fact that Trump was disrespecting fellow veterans like Colonel Vindman, who he had served with. And that guy got a tremendous amount of applause from the crowd. And that's part of what we're seeing. And the other part is interviewing a Republican woman who basically said, it's hard to tell what's true and isn't true. I just don't know. It's very confusing.
Okay.
That is what you want. You want people to not be sure, to tune in and see what's going on here. And that is the constituency that persuasion is based on. That's the constituency that these hearings are all about. When you have genuine confusion and frustration, because like Fox News is telling me it's no big deal, but why is everybody paying so much attention if it's no big deal? It must be some kind of deal. Let me tune in and see a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's important and a big part of what's going to wind up happening today. And, of course, they're giving it the full Monty. Everybody's covering it. So, again, adults learn by repetition. Even if you don't read the story, you see the headline. And if the headlines that come out of this, and the hearing starts at 10, so it starts in an hour, then the headlines come out of this that say that, Trump did stuff, then people are going to understand and hear that Trump did stuff.
That'll be my
By
headline.
The way, I should say in advance, the Masons are here, so Abby may bark and there may be lots of noise in the background, but that's okay. We'll get
through. Are you
through
building
it.
a bunker of some kind? I should maybe do this.
No, we're redesigning the walks to the front and the back.
Ah, okay.
So you have to put down
this.
stone dust after you've dug out the path, and then you have to tamp it down with these machines.
You do.
The tamper downers.
Yeah, this is just machines that just vibrate, no other purpose.
Exactly, gas-powered tamper downers that just vibrate. So, there'll be noise off and on. But in any case,
But a smooth
Molly
walk.
Q points out, Lindsey Graham directs the Republican base, do not watch the impeachment hearings because, quote, they are a danger to the presidency. He's right, and they are.
Oh, well, that's true, but that's why you should watch them.
Yeah. So it's just karma.
Keep an eye on danger. Yeah.
Karma's a bitch. Because at the same time that these hearings are starting, we're getting word from the Roger Stone trial that Manafort's deputy, Gates,
Yes.
who testified for the prosecution,
Yes.
told the court
Yes.
that Roger Stone had talked to Donald Trump directly about WikiLeaks leaking the emails on the DNC and such 6 months before it happened, before the election, rather.
Oh, yes.
And so the idea that Trump didn't know anything about it is on trial under oath not true.
Yes. I mean, he may, I guess. Unless you want to plead that he doesn't know
Ukraine
anything
is
about
Russia.
anything.
It's all the same story. They cheat on elections, and this is how they do it. And that's basically what we're hearing from the Stone trial. That's what we're hearing from this trial today. So you don't have to connect the dots or people to connect the dots. It's pretty clear.
Yeah. I can't believe that the costumes that Roger Stone shows up to in his trial, that Donald Trump will have anything to do with him, unless that's central casting, like he's the Penguin or,
No. Look, what's going to happen is Roger Stone will show up and Trump will say, I don't know who that guy is. Who is it?
Yeah, well, he's
Jeff Drew? Is that who it is? I don't know.
I can't tell. That crazy hat, and he's got funky glasses on. I don't know
Monocle,
what that guy is.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Maybe
Anyway,
that's what
so
it's about.
I want to be
that
clear.
guy.
This is what I started off with the pundit roundup saying.
Trump
Didn't really care about investigating a political opponent.
I don't care now. Yeah.
He wanted you to be talking about an investigation of his political opponent. He didn't care if Ukraine investigated. He wanted Ukraine to announce that they were investigating.
True. Yeah.
But her emails was a political strategy, not a tiresome meme you're sick of. Right? It's not going to work this time, in part because of the facts and in part because of the chaotic response in the White House. But the fact of the matter is that Roger Stone wasn't freelancing. Gordon Sondland wasn't freelancing, and he'll be on the a list of people who are going to be testifying under oath in public, whether he wants to or not. Rudy Giuliani wasn't freelancing. Trump is responsible for all of that. And so it's basically they're going to get him on a RICO charge and accuse him of bribery.
Cool. I hope it happens soon.
That's what you're going to see in terms of what's presented today. You'll see it in the next hour.
Yeah.
And
well,
the other side of that coin is, and people have to be reminded of this. What's the big deal? If you don't do anything about it, he's going to do it again. He's trying to do it.
He may do it again even if you do something about it. He is a little uncontrollable.
Well, he cheats. And so he is a cheat, and he cheats on his taxes. He cheats on his wife. He cheats on everything, and he's going to do it again if you don't stop him. So that's basically the Democratic message.
Okay, well done then, and it has to be done. Essentially, you can't just let people do whatever they want as president and pretend that it's
right. And lest we not make too many Nixon comparisons, here's Trump in the New York Times considering firing the intelligence community inspector general, who referred the whistleblower complaint to Congress.
Yes,
as if there'll be no consequences of that in the middle of an impeachment hearing.
Well, that's the sort of thing that they may do and then claim, well, this whole impeachment is baseless because the person who referred the report isn't even in the job anymore. So, something, because reasons, the guy's gone.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the Washington Post, White House infighting flares amid impeachment inquiry. A dispute erupts between the Mulvaney and Cipollone camps. That's the White House counsel and Mick Mulvaney, the acting consigliere. Over how, because he doesn't want a permanent one, he wants an acting one.
Yes.
How to counter House Democrats' impeachment push. And Cipollone told Mick Mulvaney not to give the infamous press conference. Mulvaney gave it.
All right.
Got into trouble. Because he got into trouble over it, he started to blame Cipollone for not preparing it properly when Cipollone had told him not to do it.
I told you no.
Yeah. Oh, well, you didn't prepare. Well, I told you not to do it. Yeah, well, you didn't prepare me. I told you not to do it. You did it anyway. Yeah, well, obviously it's your fault. You didn't prepare me.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one.
I mean, but that's, people have to understand, not only are they stupid in the White House, they're also fairly incompetent. And so when you look at what the Democrats are doing in terms of putting together this whole impeachment argument, and then you look at the response from the White House, the Republicans are looking at the White House and saying, you guys are not giving us anything.
Yes.
How are we supposed to work with this? Well, the best way to do that is to give 17 different defenses, all of which contradict each other. he didn't do it, but yeah, he did it, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, in the end, he's going to do it anyway. So what? I mean, but that's not the same thing as I didn't do it. As soon as they start to try to do that stuff, Trump says, I did do it and there was nothing wrong with it. That is my defense.
I'm perfect. Yeah.
I'm perfect. The call was perfect. And anybody who says I'm not perfect is fired. And that includes anybody who's considering running in the future. So you have Nikki Haley throwing what's left of her reputation. It's funny because certain people have left the White House. You know, the old adage, everything Trump touches dies. There's a handful of people that left the White House more or less with their dignity and reputations intact, sort of. Nikki Haley was one of them. She should have shut up and could have shut up and done nothing. Instead, she went full Trump. Now she's totally trashed and nobody trusts her.
Okay, good.
Right, because she claims that John Kelly, another guy who left with his reputation not intact, tried to recruit her along with Rex Tillerson to try to undermine the president, and she's having none of it. Everybody now thinks that John Kelly is the anonymous guy who wrote that book in the editorial in the New York Times. But I continue to say it's Kristen Nielsen because I think she should be blamed because she's worth blaming. In any case, whichever one did it. Mattis leaves with his reputation probably in better shape than anybody else's, and his is pretty besmirched because he had the opportunity to tell us what's going on, and he didn't. He decided to sell a book instead. Same thing with Haley, same thing with Kelly. And so, none of the people who are associated with him, and those are the good ones, you have other people like Tillerson and Rick Perry, who have had their reputation terribly soiled. And the funny thing is, of all of them, the one who's going to wind up being most intact in terms of he knew who I was when I came in and I'm still the same person as I leave, is John Bolton, which is bizarre.
He had a moment there where it looked like he might come away with a different reputation.
Well, no, but he's the Republican hawk that he always said he was, and he hasn't changed, and he didn't go Trump in order to do it, and he's not going Trump on the way out, and he's basically telling people Trump's a crook. Now, he won't do it under oath unless a judge tells him to, but he told a group of businessmen, a group of venture capitalists last week that basically Trump did everything in Turkey because John Bolton was suspicious that Trump was doing it for personal gain.
Yes.
And then he told the House Impeachment Committee, the Intelligence Committee, that I have a lot to tell you that you haven't even heard yet, but I'll only do it under oath if you subpoena me. And they didn't subpoena him because they don't want to have a long, prolonged fight about it. They want to get to today's action. And so basically that's your summary of what's going on.
Did they not subpoena him, or did they subpoena him and withdraw it, or it was Kupperman?
Well, he didn't have one that they withdrew it from Kupperman. They withdrew it from Mulvaney. They didn't bother doing Bolton because they knew they would be in the same situation. Yeah, now, the infighting continues between Bolton and Kupperman's lawyer, same one.
Yes.
And Mulvaney's lawyer, because Mulvaney tried to, I think we touched this on Monday, Mulvaney tried to join the lawsuit that said that the judge has to tell us what to do, and Kupperman and Bolton wanted none of it, so Mulvaney's on his own. And then he went around town, this happened since the show, telling everybody, Trump can't fire me, I know too much, I know where all the bodies are buried.
I know where he's going to be buried.
Yeah, so all of that is playing out. In other words, incredible infighting. I'm just making the point that chaos doesn't always benefit Trump.
Okay, I don't know if it ever did.
You throw all this stuff out and say, oh, well, it's he throws 97 different garbage things against the wall and nobody can keep track. It's not helping him to have a chaotic defense when you're in a court-like situation, which is what this will be today, and you have just the facts, just the facts, Joe Friday, just the facts, just give me the facts, and then you try to throw this stuff against the wall. It doesn't work. How is it working with the public? This is Navigator Research new poll out. Registered voters nationwide support impeaching real Donald Trump. That's his Twitter handle, 52 to 41 per a new poll. But here's the interesting and significant part of this. Independents support impeaching Donald Trump by 20 points, 51-31.
All right. Independently, they do this.
Independently. Voters say 54-38 Trump has committed a crime while in office, and 62-33 say he's abused his power. Now, abuse of power is high crimes and misdemeanors, but that's a different story. The Democrats had to explain that.
Right.
But bribery is right there in the Constitution, and that's what they're going to nail him on.
It sounds like it. Yes, I know they already have an excuse going for that on the Republican side, that they made that up.
Calling it bribery is unconstitutional.
Even though it's in there.
It's right there. It's right in there.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to use it for anything because we never have before. I know. No one's ever really done it like that.
Right. So Roger Stone wasn't freelancing. Gordon Sondland wasn't freelancing. Rudy Giuliani wasn't freelancing. Trump is responsible for everything. Susan Hennessy summed up the Roger Stone nugget here. Incredibly significant, she says. Not only does it demonstrate that Trump had advanced knowledge of WikiLeaks releases of hacked emails, it also shows additional witnesses who can confirm that the president gave false written answers to investigators in violation of the law. Remember, Trump's lawyers didn't want him giving oral answers because they knew he'd lie.
Yes.
He's basically Baron von Munchausen when it comes to the truth. But technically, Joyce Vance says, perhaps the lawyers guided him in not exactly committing perjury, but he certainly didn't answer truthfully.
Okay, yeah, that'll be the hair that they have to split. If they're worth their money, worth their salt, as they say, then they might get him off of perjury on a technicality where, essentially he'll be stuck claiming, you'd have to be incredibly stupid not to know this under these circumstances, but as it happens, I am incredibly stupid. Yeah. Right. So I'm not really a perjurer. Right. I didn't commit perjury and perjury.
Right. I just
however wants to put it. Okay.
Okay. So the assistant campaign manager Gates to Paul Manafort says that 2 Secret Service agents also witnessed the call. So there are witnesses. So the whole idea that this is hearsay, well, okay, we'll call these people and we'll show that it's not hearsay.
Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, they're back on the hearsay thing. Yes, that's now another strong talking point. So there he goes again, saying it's hearsay. The dogs won't stop with this. All right. Are they smoothing out the walk again? I guess that must be happening.
Yeah, well, they're walking back and forth, and then they take a pickaxe and
they do with walks.
Make a slightly different sound, and then Abby.
Oh, dink.
It's 20 degrees, right. So I don't have her outside supervising as I normally would.
Okay, and they probably don't really like having a dog looking over their shoulder either.
Oh, they love this dog. Everybody loves this dog.
Oh, all right. Well, even the squirrels and bears.
Yeah, well, the former squirrels don't like him, but they're not in a position to care.
Right.
So,
they're not registered
what
voters.
Else do we have? We have that Trump State Department official who appears to be a charlatan with a phony resume.
Oh, you think?
Mina Chang, State Department official, claimed to be a Harvard Business School alumna who ran a nonprofit that worked in 40 countries, but turns out that's not true.
Also, me too.
Right.
So Abby ran one in 45 countries. It's okay. We don't mind. I mean...
So
barking happens.
Here's from Politico that I think kind of captures the whole situation that Trump finds himself in, and I may wind up cutting short my segment by 9:30 just because it's about to get noisier. I can see. Trump's bluster crashes into a barrage of impeachment facts. The president's confident solo style is set to collide with Democratic efforts to publicly expose his actions over Ukraine aid. Whether it's cutting taxes or regulations or skating through the Mueller probe, he's propelled through each time doing it his own way, said Sean Spicer, the former White House press secretary and communications director. He's done it his own way for 3 years, and it's worked. Definition of working, of course, can be questioned there.
Doing it as
but
well.
The story says Trump's tactics of speaking directly to supporters, branding catchphrases, and casting critical information as fake might not work as well on impeachment as Democrats gather testimony and evidence from top officials not beholden to the Trump orbit. Even Trump himself is not sure he can beat impeachment, said a person close to the White House. It's a lot different than doing low-energy Jeb. When it doesn't involve smearing and innuendo and doesn't play solely on people's emotions, he's in trouble, said Timothy O'Brien, author of the biography Trump Nation, The Art of Being the Donald. He doesn't argue well when there's an obvious fact pattern at play, and that's his Achilles heel. So we're about to see that on display.
It's the high tribunals that give him trouble.
Right. And I do want to mention this because, of course, it was in the news. Yesterday there was a Monmouth poll out on Iowa, which was pretty interesting. It has 4 people cloistered at the top there, but Pete Buttigieg was actually on top by percentage-wise. But as Patrick Murray says, the news isn't that Pete is leading the poll. It's that Iowa voters are far from settled on their choice. So it really seems Elizabeth Warren is stalled in the polls. Pete's moving up. Amy Klobuchar is up to 5 or 6 points in that poll, so she actually has some life left.
Nice of her to join the party.
right? All of that's interesting. And Nate Cohen has some follow-up on the Siena polls and says 5 polling results that may change the way you think about electability. Okay. And this is registered voters telling them Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. Joe Biden has no special strength with white voters without a college degree. It would have been reasonable to expect, as I did, says Nate, that middle-class Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania, would show strength by winning back the white working-class voters who defected from the Democrats in 2016. If he could do so, he'd rebuild the so-called blue wall of traditionally competitive states across the Midwest and add this to the college-educated white voters whom Hillary Clinton won, and Mr. Biden would have a commanding lead, but there's no sign that Biden has any special appeal. Instead, he runs a bit ahead of Mrs. Clinton across the board among college-educated and working-class white voters alike, and it seems that all but a sliver of the white voters without a degree who backed Mr. Trump will stick by him in 2020. So those aren't the people that you should be trying to persuade. You can if you want. There's no harm because persuasion works with everybody, but just don't be disappointed if they don't. But he also adds there's not much difference between a strategy based on turnout and persuasion. In a high turnout presidential election, the choice doesn't really exist. All the ideologically consistent voters will be drawn to the polls. So you're going to get your people in a high stakes election, high turnout election. The question is, how do you get the persuadable? And the persuadable aren't Obama to Trump voters. The persuadable, interestingly, include affluent voters in the suburbs who don't like Elizabeth Warren. So she's got a problem there. And her Medicare for All and wealth tax are not going over well in the suburbs. And the persuadable voters wind up looking pretty similar to the low turnout voters. They look the same. They're not necessarily ideological. They could be younger. They could be non-white. They don't have to be working class, but are persuaded about anybody. And it'll be interesting to see who makes the best play for them, because they're a diverse group and not one single thing is going to do that. But they are culturally conservative and economically liberal.
Well, all right. We have
much bigger group than the economically liberal, economically conservative, culturally liberal Mike Bloomberg. He's like a party of one.
Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. I have a feeling as we wait for things to start at 10 o'clock, and I guess we should note for the record, Joan, of course, as many of us expected, will be tied up in the hearings, not actually inside the hearings, but tied up with watching the hearings this morning for the front page. So it's extraordinarily important that get the coverage that it needs. Perhaps we'll be able to get her to sneak in an appearance as a make good at some point later in the week. Maybe not. I don't know how these things are going to go, but all right. You know, there's as it turns out, there's an awful lot of people who get their news from Daily Kos through the blog as opposed to the radio show. So we have to make room for these people and allow them to get their news and digest it the way they get it. So, all right, as I was saying, I think we might benefit perhaps today in searching through what I collated in the Twitter stream over the past day or so, in addition to, it always makes good sense, but I think a lot of the brief stories that just deserve mention got picked up there and not necessarily parked in pocket, but the bigger stories are there. We'll have to turn there eventually. Yeah, I thought it was interesting in nabbing Stephen Miller on these emails, one of the more interesting things to me, I mean, well, I guess top line, obviously, yeah, he's incredibly racist, and you can't even believe it. He's racist like few have ever seen. And I mean, I guess here is a good way of entering into the story. Laura Clausen wrote about it on the front page of Daily Kos. I think she summarized things very well. The SPLC article, I thought, was not particularly well organized for reading on the air, but seemed to have done the trick for getting everybody right down to the nuts and bolts of just how racist he is, and pointed people to, they provided a great roadmap right up top. Oh, you want to see him being racist about this? Click here. You'll see his emails. Want to see him being stupid about that? Click here. But Laura summed it up this way. Trump immigration advisor Stephen Miller's leaked emails out him as a full-blown white nationalist, although I must say I'm also partial to the one of the top recommended diaries that I saw on the front page this morning by our user Shower Cap, who put it this way. I love even more than the name, Shower Cap. I love the headline. Stephen Miller is even racister than we thought. And other news about buttholes, which is a welcome addition as well. But for a more serious take on headlines, Trump immigration advisor Stephen Miller's leaked emails out him as a full-blown white nationalist. Here's the way Laura sums it up. White House advisor Stephen Miller has been an obvious white supremacist, obsessed with pushing anti-immigrant policy for as long as he's been in the public eye. Also, a good point made along the way here yesterday by Scout Finch, Jen Hayden, who said, do keep in mind, now that he may be running, or is running for Senate again down in Alabama, it is, in fact, Jeff Sessions who's responsible for bringing you Stephen Miller. He was a Jeff Sessions staffer before he was a Trump campaign staffer, before he was a White House staff racist. So that's the guy who's responsible for giving him his entree into national politics, and you should blame him for it. Unfortunately, he's running for Senate in Alabama, where a lot of the voters who typically support Republicans there are, in fact, white nationalists and racists as well. I don't know how many of them are going to be shamed into rejecting Jeff Sessions because Stephen Miller, but it's worth pointing out, just nationally anyway. So yes, he has long been an obvious white supremacist obsessed with pushing anti-immigrant policy. But emails he sent in 2015 and 2016 go deeper, showing how committed to white nationalist ideas and thinkers he is. And this is important, and it is revealing, and it is interesting to note. And you could see, honestly, you want to read, this is a book I will permit you to judge by its cover. Just look at him and then entertain the thought that he might be as bad as they say. And in reading the emails, it's really incredible. Just, he's like a comic book villain, this guy. But it is interesting. It's damning enough to just be that racist. It's additionally damning, and just for slightly different reasons, because of how stupid you have to be to fall into this world. But he's so wrapped up in the pseudo-intellectual, pseudo-philosophical crap that underlies this thing. You've met the type before who believe not only are they just racist, but they're not satisfied with just being out there as a quote unquote ignorant racist. They're going to be a theoretical racist. I have philosophical underpinnings for my beliefs. Why you should just read blah 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 and blah blah blah. And they're two drunken loons who philosophize, rhapsodize on secret ultra-right websites about the underpinnings of their racism and belief in eugenics and crazy depraved theories that the Nazis, literally the actual honest to God original Nazis, used to use as underpinnings for their stupid philosophies. I think it's very important that you realize how far gone this guy is, and how much pleasure he takes in endorsing things that he knows others will dismiss as lunacy. He's mentally disabled, and he belongs in an institution. And instead, he's a top advisor to the White House, and will stay, by the way. as top advisor to the White House, because Trump, who's a psychopath on his own, enjoys the cruel twists that Stephen Miller's mental incapacity adds to his policies. So, I mean, quite honestly, Stephen Miller belongs in a mental institution. Donald Trump belongs behind bars for reasons entirely separate from that, but could also do with some, let's say, time out from society based on his willingness to buy into an obviously psychopathic personality like Stephen Miller, and he loves it, and it was one of the more dangerous psychopaths. He's dangerous enough. He's dangerous because he's with it enough. I was going to say smart enough. He's with it enough to know how his particular brand of evil is being perceived by others, and he takes additional pleasure in that. He's a sadist as well. Not too much, sympathy for this guy. Throw him in a wood chipper, quite honestly. I await his execution. Can't wait. Won't happen in this country. And I guess we should be happy and proud about that we don't summarily execute people this way. But if we were a less established democracy, he'd be dragged out back and shot, and I would probably videotape it. Okay. Anyway, for those of you who are opposed to execution in all cases, I apologize, but I'm just telling you, how I'd feel about those things. I could use a timeout too, perhaps, but I'll take it after they shoot him. How about that? Anyway, just a little editorializing there, keep you interested. I should let Laura take over again from here. Right. The emails he sent in 2015 and 2016 go deeper, showing how committed to white nationalist ideas and thinkers, if you can call him that, he is. That's what I found so amazing about him. The Southern Poverty Law Center's Hate Watch reviewed more than 900 emails between Miller and, this is also important, editors at Breitbart News, which were leaked by former Breitbarter Katie McHugh. Here, I will point out once again that I believe Facebook, in its supposed efforts to get itself in shape for fact-checking news in the run-up to the next election, decided that Breitbart should be in its mix of trustworthy news and legitimate news sites and be a part of judging whether or not other sources measure up, which is really an incredible sop to the far lunatic right, which I cannot explain other than that they know that their bread is buttered there, that the lunatic right is going to spend an awful lot of money on their advertising and will push their themes there and will make Facebook an awful lot of money. Or I guess it is possible that as technically capable as Zuckerberg is, he's just socially inept and doesn't have any clue exactly what he's dealing with here and just may never get it because no one's allowed to tell him stuff. All right. Laura says the upshot of all this is Stephen Miller is who we thought, who we knew he was. In the emails, Miller shared stories from the far-right conspiracy theory site InfoWars and the white nationalist website VDare and the white nationalist website American Renaissance, and McHugh notes that Miller referred to the latter by the familiar, even affectionate nickname Amren, American Renaissance, right? Amren. Is Katie McHugh the Breitbarter who saw the light and is going to save us all from evil that we read about some time ago that I was never entirely sure about? I think so. The subjects of some of the stories will be familiar to people who follow Donald Trump's Miller-influenced immigration policy. One story from VDare was about the evils of temporary protected status, which allows people fleeing unsafe conditions in their home countries to live and work in the U.S. for a limited time. Trump has tried to end TPS for people from several countries and denied TPS for people fleeing the hurricane-battered Bahamas. Miller's successfully pressed Breitbart to use a white nationalist novel to attack Pope Francis's statements in support of refugees. Miller is now an immigration advisor to a president who has slashed the number of refugees the U.S. accepts. In the emails, which were sent before the Nazi demonstrations in Charlottesville, Miller seems particularly upset about the removal of Confederate monuments. This is before Charlottesville, pressing McHugh to write more attacking stories that had stopped selling. To write attacking stores. Right. I guess I'm like Trump reading a teleprompter here. I should have just said write attacking stories and stores that had stopped selling Confederate flags, but were still selling commie flags and Che shirts. This is the one that actually got my attention, this exchange here. But for right now, I think that's a fine summary of it. We'll revisit it. That was what he meant in it. The actual words of the exchange are almost comical. If it wasn't for the fact that he was, a psychopathic criminal who deserved summary execution, it would be funny. The next day, Miller asked, what do the Confederate monument vandals say to the people fighting and dying overseas in uniform right now, like he really cares about them, who are carrying on a 7th or 8th generation of military service in their families, like him, right? Sure. Stretching back to our founding. Gee, Stephen, I don't know. Maybe the military service to the Confederacy was service in an army fighting against the United States, Laura editorializes, not to mention the fact that, what's Stephen doing? Nothing. He's using these families as ventriloquist dummies and saying for them what he thinks would be best for him if they actually thought about the nature of their military service. Anyway, in his emails, Miller uses slang and rhetoric about immigration that would be familiar to people who read white nationalists discussing the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. Hate Watch reports. He refers to demographic changes brought about by immigration as New America multiple times in the emails. It's a phrase VDARE sometimes uses. This is not just a guy who happens to hate immigrants. It's someone who's deeply enmeshed in white nationalist media and language, who's been pushing that ideology behind the scenes for years, and who is now helping to set policy from the White House. Keep in mind, I guess, also in all of this, as I mentioned, his affiliation with, his having come into politics through Jeff Sessions' office. There are two ways, of course, something like that could have happened. Now, he's Californian. I guess you might ask yourself, well, what's he doing working for the senator from Alabama? Well, that happens all the time, of course, in Washington. And as much as members of Congress prefer hiring people from their home states for various reasons, it's not always possible. It's not even always necessarily the best hire that you can make for, the job of representing people in Washington requires all sorts of skills, and those skills come from all over the place. And it doesn't really matter whether you're from the home state or not in some cases. But there's also, another factor running beneath this is you've got someone like Stephen Miller. He may very well have been seeking out an office that he thought would permit him the greatest latitude in his most vicious racism. And a good bet, if you're from California, is that, well, your senators won't do that, even if you manage to see a Republican senator in your lifetime from California. But there are plenty of others, certainly could have gone north to the Great Plains or something, but instead he headed directly to the Deep South and happened to find in Jeff Sessions, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, someone who really would. Maybe he knew about the letters to the Judiciary Committee from Coretta Scott King in opposition to his appointment as a federal judge or something like that. Maybe not, but he probably had an inkling that, I think a conservative Republican senator from Alabama probably would be a good place to park this sort of vicious racism. And if I'm careful enough, I think even down in Alabama, quite honestly, the intellectual underpinnings of racism would probably turn people in Alabama off, not so much because of the racism, but rather the intellectualism. I don't really care what the reason is why I hate the people I hate. I just want to hate them and punish them. And as long as you're going to do that for me, I'm fine. If you start talking your nerd talk to me about why I'm a racist, I'm going to get upset. Anyway, as I mentioned, the exchange between Stephen Miller and McHugh here, during which he complains about the stores. I found this really amazing, just in terms of the, I think what would be the inefficacy of the argument. It just seems so ridiculous. Again, he's upset about the idea that Confederate monuments would be removed. And he's writing in June 23rd, 2015. So this is a little while back, right? And I don't know what he's referring to, but he begins his conversation by saying, that is a really, really, really good point. Have you thought about going to Amazon? I guess this is about, well, they're removing Confederate monuments because they were an enemy, the Confederacy. They were. I don't know if you realize this. And that's the logic of arguing for removing their monuments. It's good logic. But meanwhile, Amazon.com is selling things reminiscent of other enemies like communist countries, the former Soviet Union, Che Guevara, etc. And that's just starting off with the premise that that's the same thing is amazingly ridiculous and unhelpful, to say the least. But that's what he says. Have you thought about going to Amazon? There should be a campaign against them, he says. Going to Amazon and finding commie flags and doing a story on that. I think you've hit on something potentially profound. Now, I think you have not, but it gets a little bit weirder and worse as Miller gets so excited about this prospect. McHugh answers, yes, definitely. There's all kinds of hammer and sickle merchandise, Che shirts, Stalin shirts. The list goes on and on. And by the way, I don't know. Do I pause here? Let's read it through. Miller responds, I think that would be a very big story. Reveals just the stunning corporate hypocrisy that defines our modern culture. Misreading of everything. McHugh says, yes, and extra lulls. And remember, that's like a right-wing troll terminology for, LOLs, but lulls are LOLs taken at someone else's expense, generally speaking. Former Obama White House Press Secretary Jay Carney is referred to in this. So yes, an extra lulls, Jay Carney, who's a senior advisor or something for Amazon, displayed commie propaganda in his house with a link from the Daily Caller. Wow. Miller responds, this would be a perfect time to resurrect that fact. Brilliant. Brilliant. Yes. Not really so much. McHugh then acknowledging, I'm going full InfoWars here. It's not a coincidence that in the midst of pushing the U.S. ending trade deal, did everyone notice that the U.S. ended? We're seeing a historic artifact of real America. That would be the Southern America Confederacy. Real artifact of the Confederacy, essentially, be demonized and destroyed. And Miller finally ends up with, I bet you they sell all sorts of Che Guevara garb, too. Yeah, that's a good bet since like 2 seconds ago, McHugh said that they sell Che shirts. As a matter of fact, at 3:32 p.m., she says Che shirts. And then Super Genius Miller at 5:11 p.m. says, I bet you they sell Che shirts. Yep, just like I told you an hour and a half ago, they do. But I thought this was kind of an amazing exchange just because, well, for one thing, I loved McHugh's comment. They definitely sell all sorts of hammer and sickle merchandise, Che shirts, Stalin shirts. That's where I wanted to pause originally. Che shirts. Yeah, sure. But here's the thing. Particularly with the hammer and sickle merchandise and the Che shirts, to be selling those things in 2015, there's a bit of a cultural kitsch value to that. In the United States, most of you who are in the United States probably understand this inherently. Many of you may not understand this if you're listening from outside the United States, but I think if you're enough of an English speaker to follow along and listen to the show, you probably are able to pick it up. But there's certainly an American sense at this date, and really even at earlier dates, following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Soviet-era propaganda, recognized as such, took on a very powerful, ironic value, I guess. I don't know if I've put the words together here correctly, but even as, like, for instance, as early as, even before the complete collapse of the Soviet Union, when we had entered into the Gorbachev, Glasnost, Perestroika era, and Americans were able to travel more freely in the then still Soviet Union, there was a great thirst for bringing back as cultural artifacts the sort of obvious Soviet propaganda that, though it was still in serious and legitimate use in the Soviet Union, even then you could feel the grip of the totalitarian state breaking purposefully under the Gorbachev regime. But back in the United States, that was viewed as an artifact of a collapsing regime. And can you believe this stuff? Look at how goofy Soviet futurism and propaganda things are. I thought it was tremendously popular. I was there in 1989, well into the glasnost perestroika era, when it was pretty clear that things were on a downhill slope, but they were still holding it together. And I guess it was still, I suppose at that point, predicted that though there would be enormous reforms and perhaps a move away from old school communism, Soviet socialism, it still looked like they may hang together as a federation, as an empire. But even then, it was clear to me that bringing back to the United States souvenirs, essentially, of the old school Soviet regime, things with hammers and sickles on, things with red stars on, Soviet propaganda posters, etc. I mean, that would be in great demand in the United States, not because of the overwhelming popularity of Soviet-style socialism in the United States in 1989, but because of the curiosity and irony factor. Post-Soviet Union, when you knew that they wouldn't be producing these things ever again, there was an almost nostalgic angle to all of it. By 2015, hammer and sickle merchandise, I mean, that was just like clever packaging and ironic use of symbolism at that point. The Che shirts, a very different type of phenomenon. There, I guess, arguably, back in the day, there was more actual genuine sympathy with the Che Guevara school of the socialist liberation in Latin America, to be sure. But by 2015, Che Guevara shirts had their own special, one, ironic value, and two, nostalgic value, and I guess three, actual genuine, a sympathy for Latin America style socialism as a, stick in the eye of American corporate conservatism. This is all true. Stalin shirts were never a thing. That's an invention. There were never Stalin t-shirts except as ironic, if they even existed. Quite honestly, I've never seen one. But I don't think I can envision anybody in the Soviet Union or the United States or anywhere wearing a Stalin t-shirt except for its ironic value, and they, I guess, completely missed that. And it may be because their ideology depends on believing that people on the left genuinely admire Joseph Stalin because he's such an easy punching bag, because he's a monster of history. But, then there are people who serve in the White House who endorse the pseudo-philosophy underlying Adolf Hitler's regime and who whisper to one another when they think things are safe, Hitler was right. Hitler did nothing wrong. Hitler's only mistake was PR, something like that, and they genuinely believe it. But no one wants to bring that up. The list, though, goes on, apparently. But I thought that was pretty amazing. In addition to which, I was amazed by McHugh and Miller's confidence in the certainty, the virtual certainty, that Democrats writ large would come under withering attack for pointing out that Amazon sells merchandise evocative of the former Soviet Union, and Jay Carney, who is a Democrat and on the board of Amazon, had some of this. And that was like, to them, that was an instant, oh my God, he has some of this stuff. He even has it in his house. That's so obvious. You can't vote, you can't vote for, let's say, hypothetical Democratic nominee for president Amy Klobuchar. Why? Because Jay Carney, who is a Democrat and worked in the White House of another Democrat 10, 15 years ago, has in his house something that he bought from Amazon on whose board he serves, which has got a red star on it. That's it. That's case closed. And for these guys, it actually was. That's kind of how committed to buying their own brand of BS these guys really were. I found that amazing. And also, we were coming up to the break, and so it was not time to start a new story. So I really wanted to expound on that. But I do find that particularly worth remarking on, and there's no one here to stop me. So basically, that's what I wanted to say. So yes, time to contemplating the break coming up now. There's a lot of additional commentary. Oh, look, Athena says, "I concur, sir." And who's the guy clapping? I'm not culturally adept enough to know who's in this GIF clapping so enthusiastically. And also, she forwards on here, Stephen Miller is what happens when you give Jägermeister to a gremlin after midnight. I think that's a pretty good characterization. In your frustration with Stephen Miller, do not forget the time that Stephen Miller made a television appearance with spray-on hair. If you ever get despair of his being taken too seriously, although a lot of people would also counsel us to say, well, no, you should be taking him seriously. He's a very evil person, and you can't forget that. Don't distract from how disgusting he is by making light of one episode or another. But I don't know. To me, I enjoy. I find him effectively undermined by that appearance. And then so I tweeted that picture out because to me that'll never stop being funny. Imagine, well, you say these are guys that believe their own BS. I mean, what better description is there of somebody who thinks that spray painting hair on their bald head, is a famously bald head, is going to change anyone's idea about how much hair that guy has? Between that and spitting on his sushi, those are my two favorite episodes about that guy. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Let's see. I need to find myself time to make a note to myself. Here's my pen. I actually found it, Scott. It's right here. I want Jen's tweet about was it about Stephen Miller? Oh yeah, right. Miller and his Sessions connection. We'll see if I can find that tweet. Although sometimes I think we may overdo it by bringing you the tweets. I think is it difficult for any of you to believe that Scout Finch tweeted that? Do I need to prove that to you? Sometimes I include the links because you might like to see the tweet yourself and retweet it. But you never know. We'll see what happens. Wait a minute. Why didn't that hasn't shown up in my KITM hashtag column yet? But Mike Musson said, actually, I thought it was more embarrassing for Miller that time he used the spray on pubic hair. Is it? I think so. It certainly would be. By the way, I tweeted that one around, that picture of him. That was fantastic still frame of him on, what did he go on, Meet the Press? I don't remember what show it was that he went on with the spray on hair. And then somebody embellished that with a great touch. Do I have to prove this to you? I think it's out there somewhere. But somebody photoshopped Bob Ross on there painting the hair on a gigantic Stephen Miller head. How could you do that? I mean, that alone is enough to disqualify you, I would think. But, what do I know about disqualifying people from public office these days? I got to get to that story of the fake resume that's out there just to sort of put a finer point on some of those things, too. But it was an amazing day. Let's see if I can't get back to where I wanted to be to bring you some of the smaller stories here. Ah, yes, there was this one too, also summarized in a tweet, but it would be worth getting a hold of the original tweet as well. Let me just mark this one so that we can include this. But I noticed yesterday that many people were sharing the tweet of Abdullah Bozkurt, who I do not know personally exactly who he is, but certainly, in all likelihood, a close Turkish observer, maybe Turkish himself. It certainly sounds like it could be by the name. And he's because he's watching Erdogan so closely and what he's doing, he was tweeting around. Everyone was depending on Abdullah Bozkurt's translation of Erdogan's comments, made, of course, in Turkish. I assume, it's easy to believe that the translation that Abdullah provides is correct. He says of it, wow, angry over sanction threat. And remember, the Turkish are still under threat of sanction by the United States for the way they handled the whole our withdrawal from Syria, et cetera, and their rather brutal repression of the Kurds. So angry over sanction threats, Erdogan threatened today the EU, the European Union, with unleashing captive ISIS terrorists in Turkey and Syria, as well as 4 million refugees to Europe. And he said the EU may take this threat lightly, but he said it before and he means it. He will open the door for ISIS. That seems rather disconcerting. But remember also, for one thing, I juxtaposed that with Donald Trump's tweet from November 6th, in which he reported on his last phone call with Erdogan. And at this point, he is in, what would you say, the mode of reassuring everybody in the United States that ISIS is still taken care of. Remember that, thousands of ISIS prisoners were on the loose after our abandonment of the Kurds, who were holding them captive. But Trump was trying to reassure America that Turkey was on the case. They would be responsible for holding these people. And, they're a NATO ally, even though Trump has spent his life disparaging NATO. He's still high on Turkey. So don't worry about it. Turkey's going to take care of it. Just had a good call, very good call, with President Erdogan of Turkey. He informed me that they have captured numerous ISIS fighters that were reported to have escaped during the conflict, including a wife and sister of terrorist killer al-Baghdadi. By which he means, of course, that al-Baghdadi is a terrorist and a killer. Not that al-Baghdadi is killing terrorists, although that was probably happening as well, but not at a high enough rate for us to be satisfied with it, I suppose. Anyway, I just wanted to juxtapose those two things because, of course, in November 6th, he's reassuring everybody, don't worry about ISIS. Erdogan and Turkey have it under control. And yet we find out now that Erdogan is in fact saying, I have it under control, but I might say, screw it, I'm letting them all go, which is bad enough. But of course, there were previous tweets from Donald Trump, probably from just a few days before this November 6th attempt at reassuring everyone, where he was saying the same. He was saying that it was, who cares if the ISIS terrorists or ISIS suspects are escaping in Syria because they're thousands of miles away and we're separated by an ocean, and those people will end up in Europe as refugees and cause problems there, and even maybe, as he was insinuating, perpetrate acts of terrorism there. And that's okay because, one, it's not us, and two, it's just a bunch of stupid Europeans who we hate because we love Brexit, because Vladimir Putin says he hates Western Europe, and so I hate them too, and he's very strong and he looks good on his horse with no shirt on. So that's going to be our foreign policy from now on. I thought that was well worth pointing out as well. This is not something that Donald Trump is to be trusted on. When in his unguarded moments early on, he said, they're going to be perpetrating terrorism in Europe, and I hope they do. I can't wait for him to get started. Then somebody told him, that's actually really bad. As president of the United States, you're not supposed to be saying that. So now he says, don't worry, Turkey has the whole thing under control anyway. But guess what? Turkey doesn't care, and Turkey enjoyed the threat of being able to unleash terrorist suspects on the rest of Europe. They want out of everything. They want out of NATO, but if you don't kick us out, we'll continue to take the money. But they don't particularly care about adhering to the doctrine of mutual defense. And, if Britain wants out of the European Union, maybe we've been wrong trying to be a part of the European Union all this time. Maybe Putin will love us better if we're not. So you never know with these guys. Anyway, that was a big deal, and we probably should be paying attention to that. Let's see. So yes, then there was immediately afterwards, the circulation of the crazy story, although, now commonplace, really, story of Mina Chang, being circulated first, as I saw it, by Catherine Watson, CBS News White House reporter, circulating the NBC News story about the senior Trump official with the embellished resume, which is a nice way of saying total liar. And so put this, please, a copy, in addition to, oh my God, outrage, Trump administration, yada, yada. Put this in the why do you get out of bed in the morning file that is growing bulkier by the day. Just another one of those episodes that demonstrates for you that among Republicans and conservatives, maybe they're true to form in a way and saying, we hate elites. We hate elites so much that we'll just simply appropriate for ourselves the credentials that make people elite so that we can reap the benefits of elitism, and then say we hate elites anyway. And if people say, you're a hypocrite, you say, no, I was lying about being elite the whole time. And somehow that makes things better. But this is, Mina Chang is one of, as I think dozens of such examples. But I can only, I'm wrong probably by the data, because I can only come up with a few names where we've actually found this stuff. But I have the feeling that this is epidemic in the administration. It seems like there have been a number of judicial nominees who have been working with inflated resumes. There was John Ratcliffe, who was going to be a nominee for, I forget even already, what was it? Was it Director of National Intelligence? Was that what he was up for? And it turns out he had inflated his resume. And there are, I thought I recalled offhand early in the administration all sorts of young-ish White House aides, some of whom were eventually bounced from their service in the White House and just parked on the campaign because they, too, were inflating their resume. And then yesterday and the day before and the day before that, Sunday. We weren't broadcasting Sunday, but the day before that, I was broadcasting the story of Christiane Allen, who we still really haven't gotten to the bottom of, and we still never finished that story. But a good part of that story about Charles Gucciardo is really about how bizarre the story of Christiane Allen is and how much time she's spent inflating her resume. We'll start with this, though, because the thoughts are organized. State Department official Mina Chang claimed to be a Harvard Business School alumna who ran a nonprofit that worked in 40 countries. As it turns out, not so much. Dan DeLuce, Laura Strickler, Ari Sen teamed up for this one for NBC News. Senior Trump official has embellished her resume with misleading claims about her professional background, even creating a fake Time magazine cover with her face on it, raising questions about her qualifications to hold a top position at the State Department. Yes, that's a good question. Though later on in the story, they say that she didn't have any actual connections to Trump circles. Her connection to the job comes through Pompeo circles, essentially. But I thought it would be worth mentioning that having fake Time magazine covers puts you squarely in a Trump circle. That maybe they got it from the same person. I don't really know. All right, let's see. Whatever her qualifications, skipped a step here. A NBC News investigation found that Mina Chang, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the State Department's Bureau of Conflict and Stability Operations, has inflated her educational achievements and exaggerated the scope of her nonprofit's work. Whatever her qualifications, Chang had a key connection in the Trump administration. Brian Bulatao, that's my best guess, at Bulatao, a top figure in the State Department and longtime friend of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, attended a fundraiser for her nonprofit in Dallas and once donated $5,500 to her charity, according to a former colleague of Chang's. Later on, much further down in the article. We may not even read it that far. Bulatao does some work trying to distance himself there. And it's a plausible excuse. She had a charity. We were having a charity auction. I bid in the charity auction. And that's how I ended up giving $5,500 to her charity. Not because I was vouching for her or her charity. But it does seem fairly obvious that that was her entree into the State Department. And I don't know. They don't really explain exactly how that relationship developed, but I'm guessing just based on how interested Mina Chang seems to be in displaying this, some photographs of her taken in, let's say, fashion photographer style. I mean, some of them are just basic headshots, like her State Department picture in front of with a flag motif in the background. But she seems to enjoy sort of the glamour shot things, and maybe just that's what she's like. She wasn't posing in high fashion garb on the runway or anything like that. They're pretty straightforward headshots, but she strikes me as someone who pays a great deal of attention to her look, let's say. And it could be that I'm being unfair about these things, but I'm thinking that maybe Bulatao remembered her and chatted with her at the charity auction and was favorably impressed by her at some level, and said, if she then approached him about working at the, can you get me connections with Pompeo so I could get into the State Department? That might be, I think that's the extent of the connection. But she certainly capitalized on it and made it all possible, I suppose, by just faking up a resume that looked a lot better than the one she actually had. Which, by the way, if you're thinking of spending $500,000 to bribe your kid's way into Harvard, forget it. Just save your money and fake it. Just put on the resume that they've already graduated from Harvard and see if that works. It's a lot cheaper and seems to work, at least for a certain amount of time. Maybe you can fake it till you make it. Anyway, she was in all of this. Oh yes, right. She had assumed this post at the Bureau of, what was it? The Bureau of Conflict and Stability Operations in April. She also, by the way, invented a role on a UN panel for herself. This more fully explained later, but invented a role on a UN panel, claimed she had addressed both the Democratic and Republican national conventions, and implied she had testified before Congress. She was being considered for an even bigger government job, by the way, one with a budget of more than $1 billion, until Congress started asking questions about her resume. And I tell you all the time, don't trust Trump administration paperwork, even the resumes. Because, there's enough examples, right? The gap between Chang's actual qualifications, and her claims appears to be the latest example of lax vetting, to put it mildly, by the Trump administration, which has become known for its many job vacancies and appointments made without thorough screening. It does seem that this administration has not been doing the same depth of vetting as previous administrations, said James Pfiffner, George Mason University professor and expert on the executive branch, who once worked in the government's Office of Personnel Management, which does vetting. In her State Department post, Chang, 35, from Dallas, helps oversee efforts to prevent conflicts from erupting in politically unstable countries, like maybe Ukraine or something like that. She earns a six-figure salary in a bureau with a $6 million budget, but was on tap to take over a $1 billion budget. That's some jump, isn't it? A deputy assistant secretary usually has a top secret security clearance. Not clear if Chang has such a clearance. All of these things would, of course, be pressure points for blackmail. So it would be a very bad idea. Ordinarily, I would say you would not get your top secret clearance with a resume like that if anybody checked it out. But bigger question here, and here I'll turn back to the Twitter thread. Who was it so I can credit it correctly? See if I can find it here. Here we are. Normative on Twitter. Julian Sanchez had, I thought, a very good thread about this. Question only obliquely raised in the article. Someone in this role, where Chang is, would normally have a security clearance. Accepting that the White House is sloppy about vetting, how could this not be caught in the clearance background check? How could a clearance be approved if it was? The fake time cover is the silliest and most attention-grabbing thing, but also the least serious. Apparently, it's something she mocked up for a YouTube interview, which is pathetic, but not a lie on your resume and official government biography. Needless to say, I hope the resume and bio lies should be double deal breakers for clearance. First, because they go to a general trustworthiness, and second, because it's an obvious blackmail vulnerability if your official bio claims phony credentials. More generally, though, and this is the most interesting part of it, how broken has the clearance process gotten under this administration? We know that White House pressure overrode the career national security people in the case of Kushner and others in Trump's immediate circle. Has that metastasized to all political appointees? In other words, is there now some broader understanding that clearances for political appointees must be steamrolled to approval despite obvious red flags? Because if so, that's a bigger problem than this one official. Definitely the case. And absent some reason to think there was special intervention on behalf of an obscure Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, a tacit policy of don't bother with real clearance checks on political appointees seems like the most likely explanation for this slipping through, which of course would be the most dangerous possible situation to come out of this administration. It's but her emails times infinity, right? The whole thing about the emails was, well, you're being lax with national security issues. And I mean, what could be more obvious evidence of laxity in national security issues than just saying, you know what, the people we're going to put in these sensitive national security positions would never pass background checks because they got too many bribery and extortion and blackmail points on their resume. Just ignore it, clear them, and roll the dice. If they get blackmailed, they get blackmailed. What's the difference if they're getting blackmailed if the president of the United States is being blackmailed by Putin and in turn blackmailing Ukraine and God knows where else? We're all blackmailing by somebody and getting blackmailed by somebody else. So what's the difference? They don't know anything. They can't spill any beans the president himself won't already spill. You know, that's not administering the country. That's, I don't, do we know that it's happening? No, we don't. I don't have that proof, but what what Julian's laying out here, I think very well is there's one or two possible explanations for somebody like this getting into this job and not being caught. Either they're not looking or they've got a policy of not caring. Both of them are equally dangerous because both of them lead to Chang and others like them landing where they land. And that's not even counting the people outside government who are being given extraordinary access. Of course, Rudy Giuliani going on, but even just going back to, what's her name? Was it Cindy Yang, the Mar-a-Lago member who's just sort of hanging out, taking pictures of herself, selfies with the president at Mar-a-Lago. And hey, who knows what her connections are? And yeah, there's some Chinese spies wandering in there, and she may have invited him. And gosh, we don't know what's going on. All right. Well, anyway, back to the article here. Not clear if Chang has a security clearance, but that too is another problem. Suppose she doesn't have it. Suppose they didn't just rush her clearance through. Then she's doing a job that she shouldn't be doing. There's supposed to be a person who's trustworthy enough to have security clearance and is going to need, I mean, if you are in charge of the stability of unstable, conflict-prone areas of the world, you're going to need access to information that requires a security clearance. And if you don't have that information, you can't do the job. So even if she doesn't get the clearance, she's flubbing the job. And that is also equally bad for the country. For Chang's current job, the article continues, her most relevant experience would appear to be her time as CEO of a nonprofit called Linking the World. Chang has touted her small nonprofit online and in speeches as operating in dozens of countries, building schools and impacting thousands of people. But tax filings, they got her taxes, for her organization offer no concrete information about overseas projects and show a budget of less than $300,000 with a handful of staff. Ian Daly, former chief of staff at Linking the World, defended how the organization has presented itself publicly, and this is plausible, this part. Daly said it's a small non-governmental organization. It does not run large-scale programs and instead tests new technologies, including drones, and new approaches to humanitarian relief. We're not implementers of programs. We pilot new technologies, testing their practicalities, and seek to identify the unintended consequences that are rife in our industry, Daly told NBC News, and it's possible. After all, there was a time when they were examining the Clinton Foundation where there was some question about whether they were directly administering programs or partnering with others to administer programs and helping fund them. But here, if they're not building schools, then don't say you're building schools. That's a problem. In a 2017 video posted on her nonprofit's website, Chang can be heard describing her work while a Time magazine cover with her face on it scrolls past. Here you are on Time magazine. Congratulations. Tell me about this cover and how it came to be, asks the interviewer, who hosts a YouTube show and doesn't even merit listing by name, I guess, here. Well, we started using drone technology in disaster response, and so that was when the whole talk of how is technology being used to save lives in disaster response scenarios, I suppose I brought some attention to that, Chang said. She skips the end of her sentence and just goes to that. Who can blame her? The interviewer said Chang brought the Time cover to the interview as an example of her work, which it isn't. It's an example of coverage of her work, but it isn't even that. So I don't know what to tell you. Time magazine, well, they said, no, that's not a real cover. After publication of this article, Linking the World removed the donate button and the video with the Time cover from its website. How interesting. Chang's biography says she was part of a panel on drones in humanitarian relief efforts convened by the UN, but there's no record backing up that claim, and a source with knowledge of the matter said she was not part of the panel, which I guess was a single public roundtable that they once held one day somewhere, and I guess they had a panel and she wasn't on it. So it sounds like maybe perhaps she attended the public roundtable and then decided to tell everybody, I was the roundtable. I spoke at it. No, you probably didn't. Chang says in her official biography that she's an alumna, this is interesting, of Harvard Business School. Now note she doesn't say a graduate of Harvard Business School. And check this twist out. According to the university, Chang attended a 7-week course in 2016 and does not hold a degree from the institution. But there is this. Harvard Business School spokesperson Mark Cautela said the school grants alumni status to anyone who attends certain executive education programs, even without having earned a degree there. No word in the article about whether that 7-week course is the kind of executive education program that qualifies you for alumni status, but there you may have Harvard Business School to talk to about inflating the resumes of people who do this stuff. I mean, I imagine it's extraordinarily lucrative if you can say to people, well, if you spend some time here and take our 7-week course, it's enormously expensive, I would imagine, to do something like that. And they say, well, we'll let you say you're a Harvard alumni. Oh, well, that may be worth it. So, okay, maybe she's not entirely at fault on that one. She doesn't say she's a graduate there. However, her biography on the State Department website says she is a graduate of a program at Army War College, but the program she attended was a 4-day seminar. 4 days, not 4 weeks, 4-day seminar on national security, according to the college. And I don't think they'll let you say that you're a graduate of the Army War College based on that. Chang does not cite any undergraduate degree at all in her biography, but her LinkedIn account mentions the University of the Nations. The link here says it's an unaccredited Christian school with volunteer teachers that says it has 600 locations on all continents. Well, I guess that means they have one in Antarctica as well, or else they're lying about that. Wouldn't that be terrible if they were exaggerating? She says she addressed both the Democratic and Republican national conventions in 2016. Well, okay, what happened there? Videos and documents show she actually spoke at separate events. In other words, she spoke at breakout events that occurred in Philadelphia and Cleveland during the conventions, and they may even have been affiliated with the convention. They may have been, a side event that you can go to. She spoke to something at both of those things. That's not addressing the Republican and Democratic national conventions. Guess what? State Department and White House did not respond to requests for comment. More exploration there with her relationship with Brian Bulatao, but I think you're getting the idea here. But this is epidemic in the Trump administration. Amazing. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So by the way, I had forgotten one of the other strange excerpts from Trump's speech to the Economics Club of New York yesterday, spotted by Oliver Willis, who I thought this one was I just picked this up, and I thought a great exemplar of, once again, dumbest president ever. He, in addition to trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the members of the Economic Club over jobs numbers, something they probably follow more closely than anyone else in the world, also stock market claims, et cetera, he happens to make this comment. I don't even know in what context this comes up, but you know what? Let me see if we can, do I have this in pocket? I probably don't. Let me see if I can pocket that and bring it up on the big show computer here so that I can play this thing clearly, because it's like 9 seconds. It's Trump complaining about funding India, I guess, with some foreign aid of some kind, and he can't quite understand why we would be called upon to give money to India. And I'll just play you the 9-second clip here. It's unbelievable.
India, we are supposed to pay them money because they're a developing nation. I said, we're a developing nation too. Why aren't we?
Do you catch that? I mean, the volume is low. I'd probably be better off playing it here on the laptop with the volume all the way up here.
Supposed to pay them money because
no, it's about the same, I guess. It's just bad, low volume. So Oliver, you did a bad job in boosting the volume on this. He's complaining that we're supposed to pay India money because India is a developing nation, and he says, why aren't we? What about us? We're a developing nation. Why don't we? I want some of this money, essentially. In other words, in Trump's mind, he doesn't understand even the basic terminology of what is a developing nation. Why is India a developing nation and the United States is not? It's because the United States is, it's in this stupid framing, it's the first world. We're the wealthiest country in the world, not a developing nation. In Trump's idiotic mind, this is the same mind this is why I say every once in a while, I truly believe he'll fall for this, that if he's impeached, he'll stay seated 24/7 because you can't indict a sitting president. That's what sitting means. I'm going to sit here. He thinks developing nation. I'm a real estate developer. What do you think I'm doing here in this nation when I'm developing luxury, world-class, beautiful, beautiful condos? The most luxurious condominiums. In fact, many people are saying more luxurious than the Taj Mahal, which is in India, which we shouldn't be giving. What are we giving them money for? Look at the Taj Mahal. It's beautiful. Do they need any more money for that? No. I'm developing condos in New York, in beautiful Midtown Manhattan. Greatest real estate in the world. Some people say in the universe. So he thinks I'm a real estate developer. I develop things all the time in this nation. We're a developing nation. And I mean, they laugh. I think some of them laugh, but although I think some of them are laughing, he doesn't know what developing nation means. It's really incredible. So I don't need to really linger on that. But I get wound up about how frickin' dumb this guy is from time to time. And when you get a good example like that, you don't want to let go of it. Anyway, switching subjects, like I said, we still didn't get all the way through the Salon article about who Charles Gucciardo is and how he got into the Rudy Giuliani circles, and more to the point, didn't get to the more of the discussion of who Christiane Allen is. And so maybe we take a last shot at combing through that to get to the very end of the article and get the last licks in on this one. I think we scrambled to get down to the bottom of the various things that were documented online, thanks to Christiane Allen being an Instagram addict. There was the weird note that there was a photo deleted from Giuliani's Twitter account, August 24th. Photo of Gucciardo captioned "A wonderful boat ride with Captain Charles Gucciardi." He misspells it. "A great person." And then pointing out that there had also been I don't know whether they meant to imply that this was the same boat ride or just were simply gliding past so that they could use the boat as a pivot to say Christiane Allen, remember she's 20 years old and all this, joined Giuliani on a boat with Daily Caller contributors in July, after which they dined at Scaramucci's restaurant, which they don't go on to talk about, but I thought I might make the note that they went to Scaramucci's restaurant, which, as it turns out, it's the Fish and Hunt Club in Manhattan. And Scaramucci, like most of these grifters, dabbles a little bit in everything. But what I found interesting about Scaramucci's restaurant was it's been in the news for one of the programs it holds, I guess, or did hold with some regularity. I don't know whether they still do it. But they used to call them sugar socials. And I think there would be more, you would understand it better as sugar daddy socials. The event was, and I guess that I should bring up the link for, right? I should say Scaramucci restaurant. And that's all I looked at. That's all I Googled. And it brought me to the story of, well, there are a couple of write-ups here. I think I might have looked at this one, Vice.com. Anthony Scaramucci's restaurant is hosting a meet and greet for sugar daddies and, quote, stunning women. The mooch is keeping busy 8 months after his action-packed 10-day tenure as White House communications director. This is from back in April of 2018. According to the New York Post, I guess, that under the first reported these things, Scaramucci's Hunt and Fish Club, I said it backwards, is the place to be for a sugar social where 25, quote, invited gentlemen, unquote, will meet and perhaps discuss what kind of compensation would be required if, say, one of the 35, quote, stunning women involved would like to pursue a relationship. Dinner will also be served, by the way, at the restaurant, because no one should have to listen to their would-be sugar daddy drone on about themselves on an empty stomach. Sugar socials are our solution to a relationship on your terms. Upfront and honest arrangements, the event's invitation says, according to the Post. Meet with 35 stunning women the first hour over cocktails. Select one, or two if you like, to join you for dinner. Need help choosing the right company? Our host will pair you with someone of interest. In other words, feel weird about inviting this 20-year-old girl to have dinner with you just to develop a sugar daddy relationship and just can't bring yourself, can't stomach the idea of actually speaking to her and saying, I select you, come to dinner with me. Our staff will direct her. Listen, honey, you're only here to do this, so go sit down. Right? Okay. How fantastic. There's more on the event, but I just thought that was pretty amazing. Let's see. It's not like, later on in the article, it's not like Scaramucci doesn't know what's going down, it says, in his restaurant. As early as 2015, the Hunt and Fish Club was being described as the go-to spot for beauties trawling for sugar daddies and for customers with high to extremely high disposable income, a reputation that neither Scaramucci nor the spot's other co-founders seemed like they're in any hurry to discourage. If girls want to meet some men, this is where you meet them. Carla Facciolo, one of VH1's mob wives, told the Post at the time. How do you like that? So that's where they chose to go for dinner after the boat ride with the young girls, who were, more importantly, now Daily Caller correspondents, apparently. So once again, this is just another thing to add to the then 18-year-old's amazingly inflated resume. She's a Daily Caller correspondent, as well as having interned for Donald Trump, interned for Gucciardo, now works for Giuliani, etc., etc. So then, of course, there were the drugs, and which I threw that in over the music as we were closing things out yesterday. What are we talking about? Alan's Nevada marijuana business. Discovery Club. Again, she's 20 years old. She's done all this stuff. Plus, she's opening a marijuana business in Nevada. Anyway, didn't work. It has since dissolved. And that was also, not only was it a marijuana business, it was also a reality show. We're going to film ourselves selling the marijuana, and that'll be the funny show called High Stakes. That never got made. Then there was the note that she did do a podcast about the experience, but it was deleted. Coincidentally, though, this was the important part, Parnas and Fruman's indictment alleges that the two of them, with the help of two associates, tried to finagle illegal pot licenses for a Russian billionaire via donations to political candidates who could influence marijuana laws in Nevada, New York, and Florida. Their indictment alleges that they started the effort when Gucciardo made the $500,000 loan to fraud guarantee. In other words, these guys operate an awful lot, coincidentally, like Donald Trump. They don't recognize the differences between the various businesses they're running. Money's money, and now this money is in my hands, it's mine. Gucciardo gives Rudy Giuliani $500,000, tells him, think of this as having been paid to you by fraud guarantee, right? So that you can be their lawyer and maybe make infomercials for them. And what do you know? They also say, well, now that we've paid ourselves or paid our lawyer $500,000 and he's in with us, we'll launch a totally different thing. Here's $500,000 to be the lawyer for fraud guarantee, but screw that. We're actually changing directions and going to open a marijuana business and lobby in Nevada, New York, and Florida for changing marijuana laws. Weird, right? It doesn't actually work very well. Neither does the arrangement that they made, by the way. In case you didn't notice what's happening here, Gucciardo gives $500,000 to Giuliani, allegedly on behalf of fraud guarantee, so that he'll be their lawyer and they will have paid him and he'll be okay with doing the work. He does the work for Trump for free, but not for fraud guarantee. They got to pay me $500,000. Now, if you were arranging such a thing, if you were the fraud guarantee guys, Parnas and Fruman, and you needed $500,000 to pay Giuliani, and you thought you could get it out of Gucciardo, wouldn't the first alternative here be, why don't you give me $500,000 and then I'll put it in our bank account and then I'll write a check for $500,000 to Giuliani, and then on paper it will look like fraud guarantee paid $500,000 to Giuliani to be our lawyer. But instead, the operation is Gucciardo, why don't I just give the money directly to Giuliani? And Giuliani says, well, okay, but give it directly to Giuliani Partners, which is my security firm, not my law firm, by the way. And and then I'll pretend that it came from fraud guarantee. Now, how are you going to be able to establish the paper trail for this if you need to? Is you're already in trouble if Giuliani somehow gets investigated, and he is being investigated, and they say to him, this $500,000, where did that come from? Well, it came from Gucciardo, as it turns out. But we were pretending it was from fraud guarantee. Why didn't you have fraud guarantee pay you the money? They didn't have money. So Gucciardo fronted the money to them? Yes. But as a loan, he was going to buy equity in it. I see. Now, how are you going to buy $500,000 worth of equity in fraud guarantee with money that you never even parked momentarily in fraud guarantee's bank accounts? What has happened here is there's a transaction where Gucciardo pays Giuliani money. And Giuliani says, oh, yeah, he was going to, but that's an investment in fraud guarantee. It doesn't even pass through fraud guarantee. How are you going to turn that into equity and fraud guarantee? That's crazy. And we didn't even talk about that. Anyway, wow. On top of all that, around the same time, Gucciardo, who lives in Long Island, donated to a PAC supporting Florida GOP gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis, because why not? But remember, everybody involved in this wants pot businesses, maybe in Nevada, but also in Florida as well. So there you go. I live in Long Island. I don't even have property in Florida, but I'm donating to the governor race in Florida. It happens among rich people, right? Even among not so rich people, but for $5. Parnas also donated to DeSantis, by the way, who, upon winning the election, legalized smokable medical marijuana. So good for their business, right? The governor has since returned Parnas's donation. So much the better. The donation is on a string. But the marijuana laws, they win on anyway. But no pro quo there. I gave him the money, but he returned it. That'll be their excuse. It's unclear how Allen came to Giuliani, whether through Gucciardo or Parnas or some other happy coincidence. No matter the path, it seems Giuliani and Allen, by omission, both tacitly acknowledge that these connections, if uncovered, might cause problems, but for whatever combination of reasons, Giuliani offered her the job and Allen took it. Rudy's Twitter voice has been noticeably different since he brought her on, however, evincing that trademark Charlie Kirk-esque snark, grammar slightly improved, and penned in young Trumpublican style. Of course, she's a Turning Point USA person as well, so that stands to reason. She's injected a freshness that I imagine Giuliani finds revitalizing in such a stressful time, for better or worse. The old school Giuliani brand, the savvy swinger of smoke-filled backroom deals, the man who guided our greatest city through its worst tragedy, has given way to tossed-off lines imposed PowerPoint style over a digital American flag. There we go. This all reflects a larger theme in Trump world as it becomes increasingly untenable for serious people to associate themselves with Trump. Their world gets smaller, and the tried and true allies who hang on find themselves with fewer and fewer options for top-tier advisors, lawyers, campaign staff, and so on. It's hard to quench the thirst for loyalty in the middle of such a drought, but, as the saying goes, there's honor among thieves. They might at first seem like odd couples, but they tend to play in the same sandbox by the same rules. So finally, we have reached the conclusion of this thing. What I don't think I've shared with you is a sense of just how extensively Christiane Allen appears to have faked up her resume. And for that, I will share with you some tweets you might have already have guessed or even have seen the exchanges between me and our most conspiracy-minded Twitter pal, Der Wooter, who has been following this story with great interest, is right up his alley. But yeah, Christiane Allen, like at some point he sent me, and I'll share it with you in the roundup, a one of the bios from one of her many websites, which puts things this way. Christiane's bio here. At 18, and so that would be 2 years ago, Christiane has already forayed into vastly different worlds, from international business to national politics, to a high-tech venture, to public speaking, to charitable work, to fundraising, to co-founding Discovery Club with her father. Remember, that's gone, right? To starting her own beauty line. Really? Sure, why not? And to becoming a key member of a reality startup TV show, that didn't happen, that is both educational and entertaining for entrepreneurs. How so? They filmed nothing. Christiane started her entrepreneurship journey. God save us from the serial entrepreneurs. At 15, when she began serving numerous internships ranging from personal assistant to the former CEO of a publicly traded company. Anyone know who that is? And board member for the NFL's Corey Stringer Foundation. I believe the sentence claims that they're the same person. So how big could the board for the Corey Stringer Foundation be? Let's check that out. What else? Courtroom assistant to a super lawyer in New York City. That would surely be Gucciardo, but for some reason she listed the job as taking place in Massapequa, out in Long Island, not New York City. To an official intern / spokeswoman at Donald Trump's presidential campaign rallies. She was an intern to the Virginia State Director, and when they had rallies in Virginia, she got a few minutes in the warm-up speaker, the hype pitching before Trump got there. That's now spokeswoman for Donald Trump's presidential campaign, right? Now 18, she is the co-founder of Discovery Club, once again, which is the dissolved marijuana business. She describes it as the first subscription box company to ship CBD products to your door monthly, except that they never shipped any because they didn't get any, because they didn't get a license, because the whole thing collapsed. She's also president of Christiane Lorraine, which is her personal beauty line, which she notes right here, coming soon. That didn't come either. She's president at Allen Solutions, which is a social media management / consulting company that she appears to be getting paid for by Giuliani. Oh, well, she was hired by Giuliani, so she wasn't consulting for very long. A cast member for High Stakes reality TV, which never got shot, and was them filming them not actually doing anything with Discovery Club. That's pretty good. And for fun, she holds networking events across the country for young, aspiring / established entrepreneurs, and is actually so passionate about young entrepreneurship that she offers free mentorship / coaching. It better be free. How would you like that? What a bonus. I can be coached by a serial entrepreneur that never got any of their startups off the ground. It goes on from there, and there's more, but that's pretty much the end of what I got in the screen grab on that. I want to give you some idea of kind of what she's about, you know, and what sort of exaggeration she does. So I think reading that along with the Mina Chang story I thought was pretty interesting, even though we all know that there are other examples even more egregious of people inflating their resumes. All right. So that I thought was pretty interesting and worth noting. Let's see. In the closing couple of minutes, I haven't even really touched on what's happening in the hearings because I can't keep an eye on those things. But I think that kind of will wrap it up for that idea. Oh, you know what? There's an article here or a write-up on Empty Wheels blog by Jim White that I'll share with you, or I might not read it to you, I might just include it with you, but that likewise raises questions about the weird relationship between Gucciardo, Parnas, and Giuliani. Not so much about Allen in this one, but making explicitly also the point that, how do you get equity and fraud guarantee if the money never goes to fraud guarantee? That's a really amazing excuse that they're trying to come up with. Oh, but it has this additional benefit of bringing up another interesting point about why they structured this thing in such a weird way. Not only would you never be able to get equity in fraud guarantee, but there's this additional twist here. All of that bad info, I'm picking up down towards the end here of Jim White's article, all that bad info should have made anyone getting ready to invest so much money run away screaming. Remember when this relates back to the butt-dialed conversation. Charles will have a hard time with a fraud case because he didn't do any due diligence. And here's from a roll call article giving the bad history of Parnas and Fruman and their attempts at establishing their various businesses, but in particular fraud guarantee, all the lawsuits that have been filed against them, the number of times they haven't paid judgments against them. Anybody could find that on the record. All of that should have made anyone looking to invest $500,000 run away screaming. But in putting the funds into Rudy's consulting business, not the law firm, consulting business, they were essentially being hidden from multiple creditors owed funds by Giuliani, Parnas, and Fruman, right? Fraud guarantee had lots of liens against it from losing their lawsuits. The money can't land in fraud guarantee at any given point, because if it does, the people who are watching them and watching their assets so that they can grab them and garnish them for payment on judgments already rendered would be able to get a hold of it. So that's why you can't park it in fraud guarantee. But, wink, wink, it's really for an investment. But Rudy has a problem like that too. First, Jim says, even as the Times article above notes, whoops, I got to turn down the volume on this thing again. The Giuliani is in the middle of an ugly divorce. And so funds going directly to him, Rudy Giuliani, the person, would be contested in that ongoing proceeding. So you got to park them in Giuliani partners instead. Further, the Parnas and Fruman donation to America First Action was almost immediately the subject of a public complaint filed with the FEC. This filing in July was public by the First Investment in September of 2018. Further, although the Campaign Legal Center did not bring further attention to it until 2019, an attorney of Gucciardo's caliber should have been able to find the ongoing saga of the Pues lawsuit. Remember, these are the people, we discussed them a while back, who had invested money, $325,000, I think, the exact amount of money that Parnas gave on behalf of fraud guarantee to America First PAC in order to gain access to the political circles in the first place. That was money that this couple, the Pues couple, had invested with them for the production of a movie, reportedly. Purportedly, they were going to finance a movie. But they took the money, pretended it belonged to fraud guarantee, and used it to buy access to the PAC events. So Parnas had to be careful about funds flowing through entities he controlled, because the Pues family attorneys were watching carefully and in fact pounced on the news of the America First Action donation. And Rudy had to be careful about not having the money go directly to him, or his ex-wife would be able to get a hold of that money. Shouldn't Gucciardo have asked why the money didn't just go to fraud guarantee? Shouldn't he have asked why they had to divert funds to Rudy's consultancy? It just doesn't add up. Given his deep involvement with these same players, it seems much more likely Gucciardo understood the winks and nudges involved in getting funds to Giuliani in return for his pro bono representation of Donald Trump. So here the theory is, yes, once again, the I'll work for you for free is really about finding other people to pay for the legal services on behalf, it rendered for Donald Trump without Donald Trump paying them, because he's cheap. And I mean, what a situation it creates. If he's really a billionaire, so many problems, so many entry points into prying loose new information that's just damning in this investigation could have been avoided by just paying your own damn bills. I find that really fascinating. All right, so I think we're finally done with introducing Charles Gucciardo and Christiane Allen and all this, although I believe that we will eventually find that there's plenty more that they're responsible for. Maybe more Gucciardo than Christiane Allen, but like I was saying the other day, it's a weird combination of things that Christiane Allen happens to be into, and weird that she's got no records because she quote unquote did high school online. Would be very interesting to see what she told Liberty University she was up to when she applied for admission there. But I don't know that there's any way we'll ever pry that thing loose. But, just one of these mysterious individuals who just turns up from time to time. Extraordinarily attractive young girl who happens to land all these fantastic jobs. And sometimes, I don't want to put too much on her shoulders. Maybe she's just very impressive as a speaker. Although, again, I did link to her YouTube speech the other day. Maybe you saw that thing. Not super, not what I was expecting for someone so impressive as a young person. But anyway, don't want to insinuate too much, but okay, she might be a Russian spy. I don't know. I just thought I'd blurt that one out there. Well, we'll consider it, and I guess if it comes back to be true, we can just enjoy that when we find out the news. Anyway, time for us all now, I think, time for everybody to turn their attention to Justice Putnam's program, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, coming up next. Give you some idea of the things that we missed on this show, and then we can all go back and watch the impeachment hearings on television together and digest it there. But for now, do stay tuned, because what you'll hear about coming up next, well, there's an awful lot. Bots and trolls ignited false claims of voter fraud in Kentucky that portends something very serious for 2020. Did see that story. Glad Justice is picking that one up. Do stay tuned to hear more about it.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Let's jump right to the international flavor. South Korea has agreed to pay Trump $1 billion a year to house U.S. troops as a bulwark against North Korean aggression, but now Trump wants $5 billion a year. And pirates attacked an Italian-flagged offshore supply vessel in the southern Gulf of Mexico. How about that?